All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today's class is in a webinar format, so that means your camera will not be active during the presentation. If you can see this, though, you're in the right place. You're good to go. You only have to attend now to receive your credit. Your time here is being tracked by Trek, and they will issue your credits. Give them about a week or so, and you will see those. There's nothing that I can do or we can do to make it any faster. As soon as this is over, I report it, and it's all up to Trek at that point. To view a schedule and sign up for any other CE courses that we have coming up, I have posted a link in the chat, and feel free to check that out. All right, all right, all right. As Matthew McConaughey would say, mold. What you need to know about mold and how to read air sampling reports. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. This is really going to be sportacular. If nobody laughs or gives me any thumbs up, I will continue to entertain myself. So it's up to you. You make me feel better when you do that anyway. So, hey, listen, we're talking about mold. How do you make this funny and entertaining? I've done my best. So a heads up, we will be recording this. If anybody wants it, put your contact info in the chat there. That makes it easy for me when it's all in one place. This class will be good for 2 credits towards your license renewal. Like I said, takes Trek about a week or so to get that recorded for you. If you have any problems, send us an email. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to make it any faster. You're also going to receive an email with an option to leave some feedback. We are always looking to make the experience better and more funny, or at least I'm trying to make it more funny. Anything we can do to make this experience better. So, hey, we appreciate some constructive criticism. I never get offended. I don't know who you are and can't see you anyway. So don't be scared. Go ahead and fill something out. You will get credit no matter whether you leave a reaction or not, any feedback or not. Who the heck am I? My name is John Bolton, and I am going to be your instructor today. I started doing inspections in 1998, and besides a degree in building construction, I've picked up a few trophies along the way. I've got a few certifications and licenses. I've completed 12,000 or so various inspections throughout my career and have helped train and develop inspectors across the country. Why? Because I am a national speaker on all things that are inspection related, and I've published numerous articles in many different publications. I've even written 2 books. This is not to brag, just to let you know where I'm coming from and maybe earn a little bit of your trust. If you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to post them in the chat. It's kind of hard for me to talk with my hands and see all that stuff at the same time, but I'll eventually get there. I am by myself. There's nobody here helping me, so I'll do my best, all right? Also, I will stay here after class as long as you like and answer any questions to the best of my ability. So, real quick here, we have some other fantastic classes coming up that anybody throughout the state can join. They're always free. They're always worth continuing CEs. And here's a few of them that we got coming up. There is the link at the bottom. I have also put that in the chat for you to check those out. Hey, if you like what we're doing today, tell your friends about us. We appreciate that. Also, if you happen to be interested in having us do this or another presentation at your office or for your team, feel free to reach out. Lucas is your local regional director there, and he will make sure you get hooked up. All right, so before we get rolling today, this class is sponsored by TLC Home Inspections. TLC is a local multi-inspector firm that services Austin and all the surrounding areas, San Antonio, Houston, all those. Here's what you get when you choose TLC as your home inspection partner. We do over 6,000 inspections a year. Holy cow, that's a lot, right? So we come from a lot of experience. We also know that you guys work 7 days a week, so we do as well. We are available 7 days a week. We include industry-leading warranties with every full home inspection for protection beyond the inspection. We're also excited to provide you and your clients with access to HomeBinder. What the heck is HomeBinder? Now, for the client, it's a single, simple, and secured online platform for all of their home maintenance needs. Clients can store all of their homes related documents, including the home inspection, warranties, any repairs, renovations, anything like that that they do. They will also receive maintenance reminders and appliance recall notifications there. HomeBinder also offers a free concierge service, which is really cool. Our clients can utilize those to find and set up utilities and stuff, all those moving related things to help them set those up totally for free. The companies involved are all vetted so that they are specific to the market. Now, it's something that the clients don't have to use HomeBinder or anything like that. It's just a simple, complimentary, 100% totally free service that TLC makes available for all their clients and agents. Speaking of agents, you guys, HomeBinder brands every message and reminder sent to the client with your information. Is that cool? So it's free marketing that keeps you at the top of their mind. HomeBinder also provides a repair pricer for deficiencies that are found in the report, right? All of the deficiencies and stuff are researched so that they're all local, specific to the area where the inspection is performed. So it's going to be accurate. And this thing, that the repair pricer, it only goes to you, okay, the agent. So if you want to use it, it's free. If you don't, don't. It doesn't cost you anything to delete either. TLC typically delivers inspection reports within a couple hours of the inspection, as long as all of the inspection gods are on our side. We have over 1,400 five-star reviews online, so we take our clients very, very seriously. And we back every inspection with a 200% guarantee. What that means is if you are not completely satisfied with the inspection, not only are we going to refund your money, but we are also going to pay for and send out the inspector of your choice to redo the inspection. This way it takes away, any risk of giving us a shot. Here's a few things that separate us from the competition. We do free thermal imaging scan on every full inspection that we perform. That gives us the ability to help identify possible things like missing insulation, leaks, overheated breakers, leaky ducts, all those type of things. Most of our packages include foundation elevation readings with all the full inspections. So that way we help take the guesswork out of foundation assessment. It gives your client actual data on that house, the performance of the foundation on that house. With most of our packages, the irrigation system is included up to 12 zones. We do in-house termite inspections. We do swimming pools. We do septic inspections. And depending on what market you're in, we offer mold and indoor air quality assessments. We can take surface samples, air samples, and those are some of the things we'll talk about today. And we do sewer scopes. Now, lastly, just really super quick, we are stoked to announce that we offer the option of having your clients pay at close. How cool is that, right? Cool stuff. And it doesn't cost them anything. All right, now today we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to define and talk a lot about mold and we're going to discuss its causes, how it comes, why you have mold. We're going to touch a little bit on adverse health effects. We will get into some sampling and testing methods. We're going to review some common molds too, some of the ones that you see a lot. There's tons of different types of molds, but we're going to, because of time, talk about 3 of the big ones anyway. Then we're going to talk about actually an air sample report, and we'll break down what that looks like. And lastly, we're going to describe the impact of mold on a real estate transaction. So, what is mold? Mold is simply the formation of fungal growth, aka fungus among us. Sure, you've heard that technical term before, right? Mold is actually ubiquitous. It is literally everywhere. You cannot get rid of all mold. That is impossible. What we can do is try to limit the quantity of mold that is in our living environment, right? Mold will grow in places where it has food and water, basically. Okay. Um, Common and obvious sources of water are things like leaks, right? Toilets that leak, showers that leak inside walls that you can't see. But, those are obvious things. The not so obvious source of water is simply air, right? Because air contains what? Humidity. Exactly. I'm imagining in my head everybody answering at once. When relative humidity reaches 60%, you now have the conditions favorable for mold growth because there's mold food everywhere, right? Drywall, tack strips, baseboards, carpeting, fabrics, your furniture, anything with a cellulose content. A not so obvious source of food could be dust bunnies. That's right. When I do an investigation or an assessment, I have to look at all potential sources of fungal growth. And so, yes, I look under your refrigerator and I look behind your doors and inside closets or other small spaces, those spaces that never get cleaned. Yeah, those are all contributing sources. If that thought just motivated you to go look at your own house, then congratulations, you have completed the first step in a healthier environment, my friends. All right, mold is considered a subgroup of the fungi kingdom. So it's essentially a fungus, hence fungus among us term, right? Mold is asexual, meaning that it just naturally can replicate itself. In that respect, mold is fun. Hold on, I worked on this one too. That makes mold fungi to be around. Mold particulate is so small you can't even see it with your naked eye. So I guess it's good that mold is asexual, right? But how small is small? Well, I'm glad you all asked. So when I do an assessment, I use a tool called a particle counter that helps me identify molds which fall in a particular size, the 2.5 to 10 micron range. How big is that, you ask? Well, check out this graphic. That's a human hair, which is 50 to 70 microns. And that gives you a good visual there of how tiny 2.5 microns is. Extremely, extremely small. So again, mold is naturally present in the environment. It's ubiquitous. It is everywhere. It's indoors. It's outdoors. And mold releases spores that float around on air currents where they eventually find the right conditions to start a brand new family. Do you know why, or do you know what naked spores are called, by the way? Sporn stars. So if you have ever seen a mold report, you always see that they take an indoor sample and an outdoor sample. We want to compare those two environments and look for amplifications inside that would indicate there's a moisture and a food source creating more growth on the inside than there is outside. Make sense? Mold myths. One myth is that mold only grows on organic surfaces like fabrics, paper, wood, those type of things with cellulose that we talked about. But the reality is mold can grow anywhere it has moisture and a food source. Okay, so it won't grow on a concrete wall until a food source like dust, particles, or something like that are present. Make sense? Dust is filled with a bunch of different types of nutrients that can provide food to the fungus. Think about it. Um, a lot of people have mold growth in their bathrooms and in their shower surfaces. This is because it uses moisture and airborne particulate in order to proliferate. It's not that the tile is the food itself, right? It's not eating your ceramic tile. Another myth is the mold color is dictates what kind of mold it is. No, that's people just attempting to identify mold based on the color. You've probably heard people say, "Oh, that's definitely black mold," right? The color doesn't dictate the type. A lot of molds present themselves as black, okay? Um, the black mold doesn't always present itself as black, meaning the black mold, Stachybotrys. The infamous black mold that we're talking about, that's the one you hear all the time, black mold, Stachybotrys. We'll go over that a little later too. But my point is the color of the growth is dictated by what the food source is. Make sense? Um, Another myth, once we clean the mold up and the mold's gone, it's gone for good. Simply not true. The reality is it will grow again until the source is removed. So treating the symptom without addressing the source, um, it's like it'd be like a plumbing leak or really high humidity. Uh, it, Taking care of that just treats the symptom. Um, Kind of like a cold, okay? The cough and the sneezing, you can remove the coughing and the sneezing, but until you kill the virus, you haven't, that source, you haven't taken care of the cold. Hope that makes sense. Another big myth is everybody always wants to know what you can clean mold with. Like if I rub this wall with bleach, is it going to get rid of the mold? Like we hear that all the time. And the answer actually is yes, with an asterisk. Bleach is a good cleaning product, and it might kill the flowering part, but won't necessarily kill the root. All right, if that makes sense. You still have growth that has spread on whatever substrate it's growing on. Those roots have still grown in that surface. So if you've ever seen a little bit of mold on, say, a piece of bread and you tear that corner off, you haven't gotten all of the growth that is more systemic within that piece of bread. Yes, that's true. I didn't make that stuff up. If you see mold on a piece of bread, throw the whole thing away, not just the nasty corner. All right. Now here's the hard truth. Mold is the symptom. When someone says, I have a mold problem, or do I have a mold problem? I think I have a mold problem. What they have is a water problem, right? That is precisely why we conduct investigations to identify all sources of moisture because they can all contribute to fungal growth, right? When there is a water event, you have to act quickly. In Texas, especially, right? It's so freaking humid. It only takes 24 to 48 hours for mold to begin to grow. So when you sell a condo or a house near the coast to some of these Yankees moving down here for the winter, you've got to tell them, don't turn off your AC when you fly back home, right? They're going to come back to a fungal forest. Some of you have probably seen that before. Just like rain, we can't stop mold, but we can manage it. Okay, just like you know it's going to rain, we manage the rain with gutters, with proper grading, with good paint jobs, right? We must control the environment that mold is prone to grow in. All right. You have to run your AC in order to dehumidify, period. You can't pack your closet full of stuff, close the door, and expect not to see growth all over those nice leather shoes that are in the back of the closet. And we get a lot of those type of calls. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. We get a lot of those calls from landlords, and I sympathize and empathize with a lot of them. They get blamed for everything, and we go over there and find out that people have just stuffed their closets full of stuff, and that's why they got fungus among us growing all over their clothes and their shoes and that kind of stuff. Just because you see a small area of mold, don't ever tell anyone that it's nothing, that it's harmless. Okay. It just may be a little more manageable, but all persons don't react the same. Okay. Besides the known carcinogens, one person may have no reaction to exposure, while another will get very sick with the exact same exposure. All right. You're often seeing just the tip of the iceberg, since the source is usually concealed, i.e., rain penetrated the wall from the outside, a plumbing pipe, that's inside the wall has leaked or dripped. For those reasons, you may see home inspection reports read type and extent of visual growth is unknown, because we don't. Without putting it under a microscope, you don't know what type, and without opening things up, you don't know the extent. It's impossible. If you ever think you have a problem, you shouldn't just order mold samples either, right? That won't tell you the big picture. You should order an investigation or an assessment, because it does you no good to say, will you see a spot like this picture and somebody takes a sample and says, yep, you got mold. Okay, what's next? A necessary thing to do is to maintain relatively low humidity. Okay, ideally, we want to see humidity levels 50% or less, but let's also be real. We live down south, and that's not easy to do. Okay, as long as you're maintaining under 60%, you are limiting those conditions conducive to mold growth. So the lower you can get it, the better. But when you live in a hot, humid climate, we just do the best that we can. Our AC systems is the primary mechanism for removing that moisture from the air, right? That's why you see that little 3/4 inch white pipe. It goes from the air handler outside somewhere. That's the condensate line. That's because the evaporator it's attached to lowers the air temperature, causes the air to dump that moisture, and then relocate it outside through that pipe. That's about as technical as I'll get on HVAC. Don't worry. um, another thing to do is in any wet areas like our kitchens and bathrooms, make sure you use the exhaust fans. All right. The number one reason for fungal growth in bathrooms is people just don't use their exhaust fans. And of course, if you've got leaks, those things you just got to fix ASAP. All right, safe cleaning practices. Clean up and dry affected areas like immediately, if not faster, right? If you ever have a moisture event, what I mean is an event would be a nasty rainstorm that caused water to come in a window, a wind event that caused the tree to damage the roof and cause the water to come in, a tub that overflows, a toilet that leaks, anything like that. We want to make sure that we clean up the home and dry it out thoroughly within 24 to 48 hours, because that's when mold can start growing. You may need to even pull back carpet, and that way you can put fans on it, and what that will do when it blows air over those wet areas, it will promote evaporation, right? It will increase the rate of evaporation. So it gets up in the air, the AC system pulls it out, takes it outside, right? However, I say that, and that's true. However, never use fans on an area that's been wet for a prolonged period of time, or you can see visual growth. All you will do then is cross-contaminate adjacent areas and even circulate it through your AC system and your ductwork and all that. So only use the fans when something gets wet now and you can dry it out now. You also want to scrub any cleanable surfaces with soapy water and a brush. You want to thoroughly clean all hard surfaces with water and some type of detergent. Usually, simple soap will help. Now, porous materials, they act like a water reservoir, and they will only continue to contribute to higher relative humidity. So things like that need to be removed, all right? Some of those things will probably even be discarded. If you've ever seen a professional remediation, all porous materials are removed, because by the time a professional remediator shows up, it's been too long. And since we know mold grows quickly, you have to get those products out. If you were to see the toilet overflow and got the carpet wet next in the bathroom or the bedroom next to it, adjacent to it, and you got that carpet up and fans on it immediately, that's going to be fine. That's what I'm talking about. So those are things that you can do initially right after a water event to prevent your house from having a real mold issue. So now there are good molds and there are bad molds. Not all mold is bad. So let's talk a little bit about some of the good stuff. Okay, I thought the glass of wine was a nice touch. I got no thumbs up or nothing, but all right, number one, mold decays dead plant material. Plus, there are uses on the commercial side, like in foods, in medicines. And speaking of, do you know what the bread said to mold? You're really beginning to grow on me. Feel everybody smiling. And of course, molds can be health hazards, causing anywhere from minor to serious adverse symptoms. And it can negatively affect the property value if the problem isn't handled properly. Most retail clients, they don't want to buy a house that has a mold problem, right? Um, we at one time, we had a client, he was a professional investor. Maybe I should use the term, not use the term professional. He was an investor, and he didn't use us to do home inspections. He used us to do mold investigations on every single house that he bought. That was his primary tool for negotiating a better deal. Not saying it's right or wrong, just saying we had that guy. Also, as a seller or a listing agent, you don't want to sell somebody a home with a mold problem and then, open yourself up to litigation. And nowadays, of course, social media criticism and then a bad reputation. It's hard to come back from a bad rep, right? Here are some of the key components for a good Club Med mold ecosystem. 60 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit temps. That's where mold loves to live. Moisture, humidity, water leaks, flooding, of course, a food source. It needs oxygen also, right? But it doesn't need light. So underneath bathroom cabinets, yeah, that's why you have such issues there. Nobody sees it and it grows. It's got food, water, doesn't need the light. And it really, you know what? It really has no competition. There's no predators that are looking to eat a bunch of mold, right? So really no meaningful relationships. Speaking of relationships, do you know why the mold broke up with the bacteria? There just wasn't enough culture in their relationship. I'm on a roll. Okay, molds can be allergenic, pathogenic, or toxigenic. Allergenic mold is not normally dangerous in small quantities, but can be a problem for people who are particularly allergic to mold or have asthma. In large quantities, it's more likely to be a problem for those type of individuals. Pathogenic mold can cause infections in of course, people, especially those with compromised immune systems. But healthy people can usually resist infections from pathogenic molds. So if you're young and vibrant and in good health, that's good news, right? Toxic molds, a little different story. They can present some serious health risks to not just humans, but pets, right? They produce chemical poisons called mycotoxins. Unlike pathogenic molds, health effects from toxic mold exposure can be temporary irritation, or even more serious, like longer term illness. It can affect your suppression systems. You can have neurological disorders. Even cancer has been associated with molds. Now, there's thousands of different types of mold out there, but because we only have 3 hours left, I'm just going to cover a few. I'm kidding. Don't leave. Don't leave yet. So you'll know why molds don't make good comedians? Because their jokes are just too cheesy. All right, since you guys got to get out of here in such a hurry, and you aren't having any fun yet, we'll talk more about mold. Cladosporium, that's a common, very common mold, and it can release mycotoxins. It's very often found inside of a home, carpets, tack strips, upholstery, AC systems, things like that. It can be green, it can be black, it could have yellow dots, and it it can continue to grow in clusters, but know that other molds do the same thing. So I probably shouldn't even mention it. You really can't distinguish the mold by, especially lay people. You know, I'm not talking guys like Doc Shane that live and breathe this stuff. Not really, but you know, for most of us, you can't look at it and identify it, and don't let people tell you that. A lot of them look the same and come in many different colors. Now, as far when you're talking about aspergillus and penicillium, they typically lump those together. You may hear the term aspen, aspergillus, penicillium, aspen. Um, you'll see those like when you look at a mold report, you're going to see those together because it's very difficult for the lab to tell them apart in the microscope. Aspergillus produces some mycotoxins called aflatoxin, ochratoxin, and citrinin, which which are known. Those are known carcinogens. All right, so don't eat them. Right. Now, also, aspergillus doesn't necessarily need a lot of moisture to grow. Aspergillosis is one that you'll see growing in a lot of places where there's even just a little bit of moisture. Stachybotrys, the black mold. Okay, when you hear people say that black mold, that's what they're referring to. This is, or you hear people call it toxic black mold. Stachybotrys is what they're talking about. If anyone likes to watch those history shows, you know, like The Truth Behind the Mummy or The Curse of the Mummy, whatever that's called, where they talk about how everybody goes into these tombs and then they all die. Well, that's the reason why they found that out later on, is because there are very toxic molds growing in those areas. You know, like who knew? dark, dank spaces left undisturbed for centuries. Huh. Uh, and these poor people, in those shows, they spent a significant amount of time down there in those tombs and inhaling all those spores, and many of them really did die. That this type of mold, Stachybotrys, it fools a lot of people too because it tastes so much like chicken. Okay, I have no thumbs up. I think I'm alone in entertaining myself. It's important for everybody to know that Stacky doesn't naturally occur inside. Okay. Stacky needs a significant amount of moisture to grow. So when a test comes back with Stacky, we know that there is a significant water problem, which is another reason why you shouldn't just order a test. If I came back and the test says you got Stacky, well, your next question is, well, where's it coming from? Well, without doing an investigation, sometimes you don't know. The presence of mold, either old stuff, historic, past, or current, can impact your health. Just because mold is dead doesn't mean that the spores can't still affect you. That's why a non-professional cleaning or non-professional remediation can actually make things worse and cost you more, not less, right? Never ever hire a company that isn't licensed in mold remediation. We definitely want to make sure if you ever end up touching an area that has mold growth, make sure that you lick your fingers immediately. All right. Try not to touch your face or anything else. Clean your fingers off really good. All right. Imagine mold and mildew are like different types of problem tenants in your properties. Okay. Mildew is that occasional guest who shows up on bathroom surfaces. They leave behind some light powdery residue, easy to clean up, a little bit of bleach. Mold, on the other hand, is the squatter you never invited. Sets up shop in damp corners and spreads its colorful patches into walls and floors and furniture. It's like mildew's rowdy cousin who mildew's rowdy cousin that causes structural issues and needs like serious eviction, right? Eviction being remediation. I work on this stuff, y'all. Okay. So if you can grasp these concepts. So if you're out showing property, keep an eye out for both, but especially watch out for mold. It's the troublemaker. Those are the things that are really going to affect property value and a buyer's confidence and can kill a deal. When we talk about the health effects of mold exposure, the biggest one is our allergic reactions, right? That's the most common. It's usually because we inhale those mold spores or we have surface contact. And in a lot of cases, we get it on our hands, then we rub our eyes or pick our nose. That's how it gets in your bodies. Kind of makes scratching your butt seem desirable right now, right? Of course, asthma can definitely contribute to the severity of your symptoms. Those mold spores, like that, can trigger asthmatic symptoms. Now, another health effect of mold is hypersensitivity, how do I say it? Pneumonitis? Yeah, hypersensitivity pneumonitis. And really, that is something that we see more with mold remediators, home remodelers, and even home inspectors, because they all experience repetitive exposures, right? It could even be something where you didn't know you had a mold growing in your bedroom or whatever, and you've had this long-term exposure to it and causes that same condition. This is a condition that when you're exposed to the airborne particles, it causes your lungs to be inflamed and then hampers your ability to breathe. And of course, for immunocompromised persons, Invasive mold finds itself as an opportunistic infection. That's a beautiful picture right there, right? From what I've read, Aspergillus is like at the top of the list of these molds, and it takes advantage of weaker persons. Mycotoxin or microtoxic aspects of mold, like aspen or stachy, or any type of mold like that, these poisons start to attack or infiltrate into our blood, and then it starts to attack our internal systems. Generally, those are, respiratory systems, but it can affect other systems as well. Now, another thing that we see, especially amongst remediators who are exposed to large amounts of mold all at once, is ODTS, or organic dust toxic syndrome. And it can be present, what it does is cause like very, very, very severe flu-like symptoms. Remediators or house flippers who don't follow PPE protocol, that's personal protection equipment, can end up in the hospital because of doing stupid stuff like this. Mold is not biased. It will affect anybody and everybody. All right, now when it comes to regulations about mold, you're not going to find published standards that says if John is exposed to this stuff for this long, then this will happen to him. All right, because every person is different, right? That which makes me sick might not make you sick, or vice versa. Now, the state and the EPA, they have recommendations and regulations on how mold remediation is done, but it doesn't have any limits for mold or mold spores. So that's why it's very, very important that licensed professionals are called in to handle these kind of scenarios. Now, Texas and Trek are very, very big on home inspection, as you know, and the real estate side. And one of those reasons is because Texas is very big on consumer protection. And so what they found is that there were a lot of consumers that were being mistreated back in the day, the 80s and 90s, when it came to mold issues in their home. Contractors were taking their money and leaving the issues, or leaving them not completely or properly remediated. So the TDLR, who regulates mold work in Texas, created licensure for mold assessors and mold remediators. This is an important thing to know when you talk about mold work, whether it's testing, remediation, consulting, whatever it is. The person who's doing the work has to be licensed in the state of Texas by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, period. There are two different categories of professionals on the inspection side, and that's the mold assessment technicians and the mold assessment consultants. Okay, you have technicians and consultants. There are not very many mold consultants in Texas. There's only a handful, but there's quite a few mold technicians, which is a good thing. Mold technicians can go out and they can do the evaluation. They can determine whether or not there actually is mold by doing testing and that kind of thing. But at that point is where they pass it off to a mold consultant. A mold consultant then creates the protocol that the mold remediation company, who is a licensed component, will create their work plan from and do the work based off of that protocol. At the end, the mold consultant comes back in again and does what's called a clearance test. Okay, this process was put in place by the TDLR because of the abuse of homeowners back in the day. Now, if you or your client are hiring an inspection company to do mold assessment or do air sampling, they must be licensed in the state by the TDLR. If not, they may not have the training or the expertise to do it right or do it legally. and you can actually make problems worse than better. I've seen it many times. Okay, is mold testing necessary? We get asked this all the time, and it's actually a really, really good question. And I'm going to read you a quote I have written here. This is straight off the EPA website. In most cases, if visible mold growth is present, sampling is unnecessary. Ooh, no kidding. Yes, I just read that. Mold testing can be very beneficial to help us know if an area has been adequately cleaned, right? Or to identify the type of mold that's present. It can also help us sometimes identify if mold has been spread to adjacent areas, like during an unlicensed or improper remediation. Of course, speaking of remediators, typically you're going to have before testing and after testing to make sure that they've actually done their job and done it right. So, although every transaction may be different, sampling can help you as the agent differentiate speculation from facts. Makes sense that sometimes you just have to prove somebody wrong, right? Somebody says, "Oh my God, there's mold growing," and maybe it's not. Maybe it is. The only way you're going to be able to prove that is to do some sampling. When we do air sampling, that's one method we use. If you've ever seen a mold inspection done, you've seen something set up similar to this. There are a lot of different types of devices out there, but this one here it's a common one. Air is pulled through a spore trap cassette at a specific rate for a specific amount of time, and then mold spores get trapped on a specific area inside that cassette. So from that, the lab can determine what type, obviously, they can see it, and then air quotes, how much. So a lot of people want to know why are testing, assessments, and protocols so expensive? I can just go down and get a test from Home Depot for a few bucks. Like we hear that all the time, right? First of all, they don't tell you how much. They don't compare your interior environment with the exterior environment, right? We mentioned that earlier. It simply tells you that certain spores landed on that plate and grew. That's it. It doesn't tell you anything else. Like you have no actionable information there. Plus, once you've grown a bunch of stuff in your plate, you have to send that in into a lab and then pay a lab fee. So it's not just that 10 bucks that you spent. Now it's another 50, 75, 100, 150 bucks, depending on how many samples you take. You got to send those in and have the lab identify. If I had a home buyer showed me their little petri dish and asked what it is, where it came from, why they have it, or what they should do about it, I would have absolutely no answer, right? I would have to conduct my own assessment. There's no way to tell from just looking at that growth in the dish. Surface sampling is another methodology. It doesn't tell us how much, but it does help us identify what type. Okay, remember, it's just like a giant Q-tip, and you're taking a swab of a tiny little area. So that's why it doesn't tell you how much. It's just what is on that swab sample there. Now, some of the tools we use to identify problematic areas, number one, hands down, infrared cameras, right? That is one of the greatest tools mold inspectors have, or home inspectors, right? It initially helps us to detect hidden areas, concealed areas. You can have a leaky shower and not ever know it. We can scan a whole house rather quickly with an infrared camera. Once we find an anomaly, then a moisture meter is used to verify moisture content in that area. Sometimes you can find an anomaly and it's not wet, it's just a different color, and because there's something bigger, thicker, or there's something metal behind the surface that you're looking at, and it's a different color, so we have to distinguish between the two. Particulate counters that I mentioned in the beginning can be very, very helpful. That's something that we can use to help identify problematic areas. I can move that around the house in each room and get a preliminary quick reading. Now, the one I have, it's not very expensive. It's only a few $100. A really good one is going to run you low thousands, okay? But it also doesn't cost anything. I don't charge anybody extra to use that and run around and look for a quick anomaly. So we can help, try to save people some money if you're trying to locate areas. Of course, things like borescopes, snake cameras, things like that can get into areas that we can't necessarily from the outside. Those are really awesome too. And you can get those. Matter of fact, you can get those. You can go on Temu right now and order some of those, and they're literally like $10. You can plug them into your phone and put them down a hole. You're only going to put them down because it's a flexible wire, but you guys can pick those up for super cheap. All right, now we're going to go over a mold sample report here just a minute. If you've ever seen one of these, they can look drastically different and some can be very confusing. The reports are going to include the sample type and location, the quantity sampled, the laboratory analysis of mold counts, and it identifies elevated levels. This is a report that we have from a particular job that we did. And you'll see that we did an outside control sample here, right? And then we did a total of 3 air samples and 2 surface samples. And what you'll notice is that on the surface samples, if you look over to the right, here, you'll see where it says we did the left side of the AC and the right side of the AC. I think this was probably actually 2 different AC systems. That's most likely what it was, the left side system and the right side system. But you can see here that we did have mold present, right? Whereas our air samples, you'll notice that in bedroom 1, there is no problematic fungi. All right. With the other bedrooms, we have problems. You can actually see a count here. In other words, there's a higher concentration of those listed molds on the interior than there is in the normal environment outside. Aspen or penasp, or however you want to say that, that one being the most dangerous as it can produce some of those bad mycotoxins we talked about. The report just standalone here tells me something is rotting in the house, right? So that's kind of a synopsis of the mold report and what the mold samples look like. Also, you'll see included in these reports will be some additional information, different types of molds that you'll see. I've blown up the penasp so that you can see. There we go. So that you can see that. It kind of breaks down a little bit of, like if you scroll down, it'll kind of break down a little bit of the details about what to expect when it comes to those molds. This lab here makes it really super easy. All right, as we get ready to wrap it up, and looks like I'm doing good on time, we'll talk a little bit about how mold affects your deals. Things like lawsuits, right? The last thing any of us needs is another hole in the head, or like my dad used to tell me, the last thing we need is things like lawsuits. The last thing any of us needs, so it's it's best from an agent point of view to hand this liability over to somebody else. Price issues, nobody wants mold in their home. There's not going to be very many retail buyers that are going to be okay with buying a home that has mold, that hasn't been remediated. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get a lowball offer from an investor only. And mold remediations can be expensive. They're going to be very, very costly. Mold remediation jobs are typically a thousands game, okay, not a hundreds game. I've seen several that were north of 10 grand. If you let mold get out of control, it does have the health risks that can present themselves to potential buyers, potential owners, and even pets. Mold doesn't have to be a deal killer, though. Okay, we call this a two-step process. It's a phone call and a check, and you can make this stuff go away. If you break it down that simple, you take some of the fear out of it, and some of the people that are more apprehensive brings them down a notch, right? What should a seller do when a mold problem is discovered? Get a licensed professional to do an independent evaluation, not lick the wall. Come on, that was funny. I thought that was funny. You want to transfer liability, get things in the proper perspective, test when necessary and get lab results, get a protocol for remediating the issue when necessary, then properly remediate the issue, and then obtain that PRV, the post-remediation verification. And that, folks, is it. I appreciate everybody for joining us. I know it probably seemed like a lot of information thrown at you at once in just a little bit of time, but I hope you walk away feeling a little bit more informed about mold. And by all means, if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. So with that said, thanks again. If there are any questions now, I will do my best to answer to the best of my ability. You can throw them in the chat or raise your hand or just speak out if you will. If you think you've gotten everything and you don't have any questions, you are free to go. You will get full credit. If not, then I will say spore you later.